think of them as sort of, sets the stage, this is sort of the scale or magnitude of what you want to do under this sort of assumptions. And that should help in some of your priority setting discussions, I think. So keep that in mind. Where applicable, we use the QEM report or QEM model to come up with a lot of them. I also ventured out, instead of trying to come up with new ideas or new assumptions, use things that the various agencies had come up with already in the agency request budget, in a couple cases in the governor's budget, though I have not spent any time digging into that budget very deeply yet. Keep in mind, these are statewide numbers. The law of averages rule in this case. That's how QEM works. So in the discussions, as you dive deeper into this during session or whenever, you need to think, as Michael said, think about the small district sum, because there is a big difference between a school district with 100 kids and a school district with 40,000 kids and how they address issues. Keep in mind that many of these recommendations may require expansion of facilities or remodeling. That's not factored into the cost directly, but keep that in mind, mostly around things like class size. Some districts will be able to absorb smaller classes. Others in growing districts will not be able to absorb without some type of construction or severe or just intensive remodeling. The same thing with staff. A lot of these are quite staff intensive, whether it's preschool or adding teachers to the class sizes would mean more teachers. You have supply issues with teachers, preschool teachers, social services in some cases. Those, you have to have those in hand before you expand to the programs. I suppose you can say if we build it, they will come, but that's not always the case. These are priced independently, even though if you do this recommendation, it may change what happens over here on this recommendation. You also have 2 or 3 duplicated recommendations from different work groups here. Things like chronic absenteeism showed up at least in 2 of the recommendations. Keep in mind, I've tried to give you 2-year costs in this, but some of them are phased in costs, and I may have to still come back and get those and take care of those in the future. I assume that these are all general funds, because there are no additional other funds in terms of that on the most part. We will seek out, as you work through this, as ways of maximizing federal funds, but at this point, keep in mind that most of these are general fund in nature. And finally, one issue that Mr. Griffith brought it up a little bit. You have a number of schools that have already implemented some of these. They've made decisions. District X may have decided to lower class sizes significantly. They've already done that. If you do some kind of funding, and as narrower as you get at the categorical funding, the more important this is, how do you take that district that had already made that investment, sacrificing something else?
Please try your calling.
And you have to balance that, because this school already made the investment. You got to give them the flexibility to take that money and use elsewhere or whatever. And as you narrow the grant in terms of the purposes, the more that becomes more important. So, and the last thing I want to say is, if you're sitting there with your calculator, if you pulled out your cell phone and you're trying to add these up, please put the calculator down. And back away from the calculator. There is a total, but there are so many assumptions made. I've already had a couple people come in and ask me today, how much does this total to? That's not important. You need to take a look at these as sort of an estimate at this point, or as a magnitude. Please don't try to add it up. I will tell you it's well north of $2 billion. So let's change. We'll go to this. It is up on the screen. I'll try to keep up on that. There are 3 work groups, and I'll just start and work through these as quickly as possible.